Breaking news, your government is changing the weather. They're controlling the weather. All this and more in Self-Evident Podcast.
Hard-hitting news.
Yeah, good afternoon, folks. This is Massey Compost and Mike Sonneville coming to you from Self-Evident Newscast. There's some breaking news going on. But before we actually get into the news, we want to let you know that you have an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to get yourself some bona fide hurricane merch, like shirts.
Ride out the storm in style
merch.
with Self-Evident merch.
Yeah, all that. You can get a cool hat that keeps out the rainwater from your head.
Now, you may be wading in waist-deep floodwaters, but your head will be dry.
We even have long sleeves to protect you from any debris that's coming your way from any kind of wind. Or
the debris. Or
you better subscribe because we got things to do.
Just hide under that forehead. It'll keep you covered for days.
That's right. So you go on to theselfevidenttruth.com. You guys can be a supporter. Forgive us, we're not in the studio right now, Mike and I. We are at home. We were doing some cleanup yesterday, doing some different things around because obviously there's a little storm that happened the other night. And thank God it wasn't bad, the hurricane, but tornadoes did affect our area, not too far away from us, actually blocks from us.
Yep.
So we were out helping the community, and I was going to go to the office, but I thought, well, Mike texted me and he said, I don't want to.
Pretty much,
and
yeah.
So
it was like, why go there when we could do it in the kitchen?
Since he runs the show.
You see what happened
anyway there? So if you don't like the lighting or any of this, it's not my fault. But if you love it, it's my idea. So guys, welcome again to the selfevidenttruth.com, Self-Evident Podcast. This is kind of breaking news in a sense that we all know that the government manipulates. It's not something new. We're going to keep this little breaking news thing because I like it.
Now we just have to populate it with stuff.
Right. But this is nothing new. That governments are nefarious. Governments have always been in conspiracies. What's so crazy is a lot of people who know history don't think it can happen again. That's what's so weird. And this is the issue with not knowing history. You don't realize how nefarious governments can be. When you look at Hitler's and the left really will reference Hitler a lot because of Trump and all that stuff. But if you know any history of Hitler, it was his own regime that attacked his own Reichstag, that went after his own people and those kinds of things. So governments have always conspired. All the great dictators did it and do it. You know, they try to, Machiavelli talks about it as well. So you have all these conspiracies that go on, and government literally contrives and always has an answer for them. And it's biblical as well. The government's conspired against their people, all that kind of stuff. So there's nothing new under the sun. However, with technology, it's hard to believe what to believe.
Yes.
Right. So like with the introduction of AI and all these other things, which have been in the market for years, it's just really been recently introduced, but it's been out there. You don't know it's hard for people to tell what a generated photo on AI is, or video or anything like that. Voice manipulation, all those kinds of things have been happening for a while, the deep fake stuff.
Yeah.
And so, what do you believe? Well, we got some really cool things that we're going to bring up today about weather manipulation, because a lot of people have been asking, what do you think about this? And when I mean a lot of people, my wife asked me about what do I think of this. Don't you love those little commercials on social media when they're like, I've had tons of people ask me about my product, and it's like, you had one message.
Yeah, and they weren't even asking about your product.
Asking about the product used. So no,
my wife asked me, would you shut up about this topic? That's who asked.
No, actually, I have had questions about it, and so we thought we'll cover it. There are many of you who probably will watch this and say, well, I've known this for years and all that other stuff. And it's like, well,
you're so full of crap.
And
just kidding.
I didn't say it. But no, if you did, great. Good for you. Shout it from the rooftops. If not,
Shut up and listen.
Well, no, I think you should shout it from the rooftops. I think there's many of us who try to keep it under wraps because you would look crazy or whatever like that. All I'm going to tell you is truth is truth, and we got to get it out there. And even if we're wrong about this, I don't put it past government to do anything crazy. Now, if you guys watched the recent movie Twisters, I don't know if you guys have watched that. You guys saw something of weather manipulation that was happening at the time. So like the lady was putting, I can't remember what it was called, sodium. Do you remember it, babe?
So
sodium dioxide, chloride. I don't even know. I didn't even say the thing right. But they shot it up in the twister and it makes the whole thing freeze. And so then the water collects and basically turns into hail. Tornado dissipates, that kind of thing. So even Hollywood has kind of referenced and mentioned some of these things before. And we all know Hollywood's about 6 years ahead of everything, 6 to 10 years ahead.
It's because the CIA is feeding them their
Which
actually is
true.
And we're not saying the CIA determines every single movie, but there is
influence.
There are documents through FOIA requests showing that CIA has had their hand in movies before, and
Pentagon,
as well as
the
news
Pentagon,
and all of that.
So they have their hands in the briefings and all these other things as well. So it's all controlled information. They and again, you can fact check me all you want. Every government has done this. Look at Zelensky. He's controlling his media. Why? Because you got to control a narrative in order to get the people to get behind you. It's happened in many civilizations. This is nothing new. You always paint the king in a good light, even though he's a wreck. I mean, look at Machiavelli. Basically said, by whatever means necessary, as long as the king as long as you're obedient to the king, and there's a hard rule, by any means necessary, get it done. So whatever it takes, contriving things, whatever. So these tactics are nothing new. So we're going to get into that.
Yeah, let's get into this. So basically, what we wanted to pull apart is there's a lot of information going around, a lot of rumors, a lot of myths. Oh, they created the hurricane out of thin air. The Helene hit North Carolina for lithium fields, all that. Now, Helene, I didn't get as much into when I was doing the research because that's a whole nother hours of research to figure out, okay, what is the truth on what's going on the ground. But this whole idea of weather manipulation, we did want to get into because there's some truth, and then there are theories. And some people are taking theories, placing it onto truth and saying, this is what happened. And I actually saw today on Facebook, somebody was like, I don't know what's going on. I heard about this 12 hours ago, and I don't know that I believe it. And I was able to post in there kind of like the truth of like cloud seeding and all of that, because there is truth to this.
Sure.
And it goes a long way back. So this technique has actually, cloud seeding, what is that? We'll start with that. What cloud seeding is basically, hey, let's make it rain. That's really what it is. So decades ago, even back in the 1970s, there was a paper published in 1970 discussing the environmental effects of silver iodide, which was also used in Vietnam, and there's validity to this. They were using it in Vietnam to try and create rainstorms to flush the Viet Cong out of the jungle. It's a pretty accepted practice. So much so that now they use it in the Middle East, and this is documented. I got links to CBS talking about this stuff.
Right. There's actual video of this.
Yeah, like especially in the United Arab Emirates, these people have so much money, they just need to do something with it. So it's like, let's create rain. So what they do is they find a cloud system, and then they take these chemical compounds. They used to use silver iodide. Now they tend to use the salt compound, I think probably because of toxicity questions. They take a plane and they fly it through the clouds. They drop the salt compound into the cloud. What it does is it attracts moisture. Well, what happens when there's too much moisture in a cloud? Go back to third grade. The rain falls. Science. You never thought you'd use that again, did you?
Watch out, Bill Nye. We're coming at you, Bill.
I know as much about weather patterns as Bill's science guy does. Bill, you're a mechanical engineer. Quit.
Yeah, that's right. You suck.
Flat out, he's actually a mechanical
Yeah.
engineer. No,
yeah.
Dude, go back to your.
Who says he absolutely doesn't believe in absolutes? That's what he told Ken Ham.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he absolutely doesn't believe in absolutes.
Did Ken Ham hammer it on it? Good.
He did.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
There are no absolutes. Are you absolutely sure?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh. Hope that works out for you. Anyways, so they're making hurricanes. Start from the top. Now, you have seen something that this is legit. You've probably seen this float around. A page on NOAA's, NOAA, on their website about a military experiment back in 1947.
Yes.
This is true. This is true. This situation actually did happen. What they did was they took some bombers that just got done bombing Hiroshima. I don't know if they actually used those bombers, probably not. But, drop nukes.
Probably a lot
Change
like
hurricanes.
Kamala using that
C-17.
C-17 full of.
Yeah. Because you don't want to actually fly the plane. You just want the photo op.
That's right.
If you don't know what we're talking about, it's Kamala Harris. It's the Democrats. What do you think they did? They made a photo op and then they didn't even worry about it. Anyways, so in 1947, the U.S. military experimented with dropping crushed dry ice into a hurricane. Now, my first thought was, teacup in an ocean. But what they did was they waited until this hurricane in 1947 moved through Florida, and its pathway was kind of like southeast, right? So it came up, it went through Florida, heading it was coming from the southwest, heading northeast, cuts through Florida. It's out in the Atlantic, and they go, perfect time for us to experiment.
Yeah, because it's already been slowed down, and you're not.
And there's no people underneath in case, you create a Category 7 or something. And all the hurricane people are going, there's no such thing as a Category 7.
These guys don't know what they're talking about.
Sorry, I'll shut up. Anyways, so they waited until it moved into the Atlantic. They seeded this hurricane. They dropped about 80 pounds of crushed dry ice on the outer winds. And then they went over the top of the cloud and they dropped another 100 pounds of crushed dry ice. And they said, okay, let's see what it does. And they're like, we know where it's at. We'll fly back tomorrow. So they fly back the next day. That hurricane ain't nowhere to be found.
That's crazy.
So they start looking for it in about a 100-mile radius, and they find that it had actually turned basically 180 degrees and headed back towards Georgia. And it ended up doing damage, like $2 million worth of damage, all of that. Now, on NOAA's website, in the article about this event, it says, now GE was part of this whole thing, which maybe they were the first version of BlackRock, who knows? GE's case was not helped when the head of its laboratories, Dr. Irving Langmuir, issued a statement that he was 99% sure the storm had changed course due to the seeding. Chief of the Weather Bureau, Dr. Francis Reicheldorfer, who probably came from Nazi Germany, thought differently and appointed 3 of his weathermen to find a case where a hurricane had followed a similar track but had not been seeded. The case was published demonstrating that hurricanes could swerve like that without the use of dry ice, and threats of lawsuits eventually evaporated. Because people were actually threatening lawsuits because of this experiment. People in Georgia saying, you destroyed my home because you dropped dry ice into this hurricane. Now,
that's amazing. They found several other hurricanes to not have a lawsuit.
Right. Yeah. This data totally shows a couple other hurricanes. It's like Boeing going, other planes fall out of the sky. No lawsuit here.
There's tons of data.
Yeah, tons of data. Other people's plane doors fly off too, not just us.
Faulty doors don't put out the tires all the time. Look at Spirit Airlines. I mean,
they just duct tape people to the top at Spirit. We don't worry about doors. You ride convertible at Spirit.
Do the foam stuff.
The foam crack fill. Could you imagine the flight attendant is just like spraying it on the door? No, we're fine, everybody.
It's good. We're not losing cabin pressure. It's just the lack of oxygen happens on planes.
Everybody, you're lightheaded because we're all having fun here. Let them pass out, then they won't know.
Oh, man.
Anyways, okay. So now you may think, okay, that's one experiment. Other experiments have been carried out on other hurricanes.
Yes.
So between 1962 and 83, they were experimenting with silver iodide on various hurricanes. The thought was they could affect the hurricane to lower the speeds of winds as much as 10%. They attempted it on 8 different tries. Now, on 4 of those days, the winds decreased between 10 and 30%. On the other 4 days, there was no real response. They think because it was a lack of faulty seeding process or a faulty seeding process. So that lack was caused by, well, we didn't do it right. NOAA also reported these promising results came into question in the mid-1980s because of observations in unmodified hurricanes that indicated cloud seeding had little prospect of success because hurricanes contained too much natural ice and too little supercooled water. Positive results inferred from the seeding experiments in the 60s stem from inability to discriminate between expected results of human intervention and natural behavior. NOAA also reports that because hurricanes' eye walls can shift and change in a way that mimics what is expected, effect cannot be positively determined. So
It's like a bunch of canceling out.
Yeah.
Their findings were because they couldn't read the data accurately and they didn't know the difference. And
There's variables, so it probably didn't work. Wink.
so true. So true.
No, nothing to see here. It's totally randomized.
Yeah, but I mean, moving on to the patents, because a lot of this is being shared on social media right now about patents, and there's all these patents and all these other things. And both Mike and I agree. We've been talking about this for the last couple of days about patents and all these other things. And he actually opened my eyes to something, and I think everybody should know. Just because there's a patent for something does not mean it's been brought to fruition or it works.
Yes.
A patent is a design of something, a design of a product, a design of a concept, maybe a design of a molecular theory or a mathematics equation. So it's not so much that the patent guarantees something goes to product. It's just the patent is, this is what I've come up with in my design. It's unique from others, and we patent. So there's a lot of things that have had patents, and I shared something with him yesterday, I believe, that from in the 30-year span from like the 60s to the 80s and 90s, there was like several patents made about how to manipulate the weather. And the silver iodide stuff, seeding, cloud seeding, even down to shooting. I hope I'm getting this right, like solar rays, or not solar rays, but like gamma rays and all these other things. A lot of stuff was happening, like he said, in Vietnam. So just because the patent exists does not mean that it was effective or in use. It's just an idea or a theory that they can then say, this is patented. I'll sell it to the federal government. They'll give me more money because it's already patented. And, it's had some success in a trial run or whatever.
And it's like, a patent is basically an idea. I think A plus B equals C. So you develop your patent, you patent it, so that way, if it comes to fruition, ain't nobody going to steal it.
Right. So then you kind of do this is my theory. You look around, you're like, no one else has this. Cool, patent. You know.
And these weather patents go back as far as the 1800s, where they were truly talking about balloons filled with certain chemicals. They would burst in the cloud. It would create moisture and create rain, right?
Which is what the first twister was. Those little balloons that got caught up in the first twister.
Oh, is that what it was?
Well, it was like those little pods, you know what I mean? Yeah. Huh? No, it wasn't air balloons, but it was pods. It was like little pods that... No, I'm saying it was to control the tornado, to watch the tornado process thing. I'm saying the patent. You are not in this podcast. Okay, Kamala.
She's defensive about
Kamala Harris over here can't spread misinformation. I'm not saying it was used to control the tornado. I'm saying it was used in some sense for the tornado. You know what I'm saying?
Hollywood.
Good night.
Hollywood.
I'm fighting my own household.
Aliens. Anyways, so in even patents as late as the early 2000s are there to develop tech to control tornadoes. And some of these patents include using radio waves or energy direction. Now, some, such as Israeli scientists, cue all the Jew conspiracies, claims inserting smoke particles into a hurricane could lower wind speeds. And of course, Mr. Burns, aka Bill Gates, has patents listed in 2008 with 12 others as inventors of a number of methods to control and prevent hurricanes. Those include cooling of the ocean water temps. Now, even on October 9th, 2024, a man named Bruce Morton did a press release for himself because he's trying to build up funding for this patent that he just got. Retired aerospace engineer and rocket aerospace engineer and rocket scientist. It's so funny. I can write. I can't read.
Bro, you can write really good.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You just got a 4th grade reader level, but that's all right.
Exactly. Hook it on Pahonic, work it for me.
So what's that stuff? What's that? Language one?
Language one.
Susan B. Anthony, or it's like language you can.
I don't know about that. I know Hooked on Phonics, but you guys remember that? Those
Yeah,
commercials?
the 90s,
Yeah,
80s.
Brian Regan had a great joke about that. Hooked on Phonics, work it for me. I think it was Regan. It might have been Robin Williams. Who knows? So Morton's theory is beaming microwaves from multiple space-based solar power satellites and focusing the microwaves in a non-symmetrical pattern onto a tropical depression, which is a precursor to a tropical storm and then a hurricane, blah, blah, blah. Morton, you're trying to show us your expertise, to unbalance and destabilize the tropical depression. Now, my question is, if it's non-symmetrical, what would happen if it was symmetrical microwaves? Would you then maybe speed stuff up? Because my microwave heats up my burrito that I got from 7-Eleven. So why couldn't I heat up the ocean? What's that?
Extension cord with a line of microwaves.
That's it. It was Pedro over in Mexico. He had 40 microwaves out on the coast, and he was heating up the hurricane, and that's what did it to you, Florida. It's all Pedro. I control the weather. Anyways, so he wrote this press release October 9th. There is this idea that maybe microwaves could help control it. Now, people have been bringing up HAARP, HAARP. You want to hit this one?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So this is basically a radio antenna, like in Alaska, that has been chopping. Basically, it's been on kind of like the government's watch list. It's like been a part of like where they can put a lot of funding in. Like he said, we got money, we got to spend it. And you know anything about bureaucrats, they got to take the money, and if they don't spend it, they lose it. So they keep doing this where they spend it, and then they keep upping that same spending power. So they may need it for 1 year, but if they don't have it the next year, then it gets cut. And so it's basically one of those things. And so the example that these people have been using is they've been able to send radio signals to submarines deep under the ocean to alert them to surface. HAARP is it's been a kind of a point of contention, especially on social media. And one of the things you got to be careful on social media, and I really mean this, Christians, anybody who's a truth seeker, be careful what you're sharing. You don't know everything. I don't know everything. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong to question. I think we should all question. I always question government. I question their methods. I question what they do, why they think it, because governments have used their power and abused it so many times. And I just don't trust government. I don't trust anybody up in government. I wouldn't trust myself in government because you give a man power and it's easily corruptible unless you're God's kid. So I don't trust government as far as I can throw them. And people, if I ever got elected, shouldn't trust me. You know what I mean? You should always be skeptical of what man can do with power. And so with HAARP, just be careful what you're sharing. These, again, just because these organizations exist does not mean they're effective. I will say that they're being funded. Like, look at the IRS. Is it effective? No, but it's been funded for years, right? I mean, let's be honest, right?
You get audited tomorrow.
look at the Department of Education. Has it been effective? No, but it's getting funding. You know what I mean? Let's just go with what it is.
All
you know,
the teachers are rage typing right
I mean,
now.
come on. You know, like you're seeing it decline worse and worse. Look at our federal government. The more money we pour into it, it's less and less effective, right?
Isn't it funny? Like, the more money these people have, the less less of a good job they tend to do.
How much money have we passed in bills towards education, and it gets worse and worse and worse? And these kids get
you can say it.
No, I don't want to say dumber and dumber because they're only a product of what they're taught, right? So and how people push them. Our education standards get worse and worse and worse, right? So the more money we put into it does not equate to the success that they said it should equate to. And even now we're saying that the poorest of us is the colored of us, and that's just a false statement. That doesn't always mean that.
Kind of like Biden, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway,
so again, HAARP and all these other organizations does not. Again, like, do you guys remember the NASA space race? This is probably one of the easiest examples. We were in such a crunch to beat the Russians. And so when Russia sends up a rocket to orbit, we're like, okay, we got to do something big. So we go try to land on the moon kind of.
We're going to the moon.
Right. So there's so much contention about the moon landing because of how crazy the federal government was to scramble to get something done. I'm not saying JFK approved any kind of obnoxious spending or anything like that. However, he was pushing for a big move by the U.S. to be the first in the world to do something.
And he said, in 10 years, we will be on the moon.
Right. So
now we're not saying
and a lot of people
land.
Right. But we're not saying we did because, like, again, we don't know what happened in the 60s. You look at photos and whatever you want to believe. I'm not a huge conspiracy guy. I like truth. So when I look at conspiracies, I try to find the truth in it. You know, when you look at 9/11, it's not wrong to question things. It's not, because not everything is the truth. Look at how fast they found Lee Harvey Oswald. How fast they found some of these guys, and they came up with a theory. Bam, sold it to the American people, and that was it. It's like there's no questioning. It's like, well, why can't we question? And why are we called misinformants if we question? Why are we on the hot seat for questioning and saying, look, I just want to know the truth. Is this really true?
Oh man, rabbit trail. Because
Go ahead.
we could go down that line of like.
I think it's good though.
Isn't it funny that the government so quickly says, no, if you question us, if you say we're wrong, then it's misinformation and it's dangerous. The government should not have to, one way or another, should not be worried about what the people are talking about in terms of truth, right?
Yeah, why is it the federal government can question you all the time, but at the moment you question them, it's wrong?
Yes.
Why is it that they have such evil against the people and trying to restrain the people of their liberties, but the moment you say we need to rein in government, they're saying, whoa, that's not what we're doing here. We're for your good. Bro, anytime I see a person of authority say, I'm in this for your good, the fact that you have to justify it with your words proves to me, if your actions don't prove it and your words have to, that proves to me in a lot of ways that you're not doing that.
The scariest words for anybody is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah, Reagan said that. And it's so true. So, again, don't be afraid to question. And I think this is what gets people into trouble by media authorities.
And especially like this whole HAARP thing. Could it be used to create a hurricane? I don't know enough about it. Neither do you. Here's the deal of what HAARP is. It uses radio waves to heat up the ionosphere to be able to send radio signals farther and penetrate more. That's what we know. Now, you will get those people who are like, I have a friend who's got a friend whose brother's sister's former roommate was there as a janitor and saw him do it. Beware of your sources.
Beware of it, yeah.
Right? Because people will tell you, oh, yeah, they're using it to control the hurricane. And I heard on the internet, on 4chan, that that's what they're doing. I'm not saying that's not what they're doing, but I'm saying beware of sharing this stuff.
Right.
Dude, I just saw a perfect example of this. Somebody created a graphic that another hurricane is coming straight up from the south and is going to be here in a couple of days, and it's Hurricane Leslie. Stop sharing that. It's crap. It is not true.
You don't even see it on any chart now if you look it up on the, and people are saying, oh my gosh.
Leslie is out in the middle of the Atlantic, right? So all you have to do is when you see that type of stuff, this is what I want you to do. When you see something posted of like, oh my gosh, this, go to the website. Google the website.
Right.
Go. So if it's a hurricane, go to NOAA Tracker, Hurricane Tracker. You can see right on the front page where the hurricanes are and what they're doing and their percentage chance of growing into a hurricane or dissipating, all of that.
And this is the kind of crap they have to show. You know, they're not going to lie to you, because if they don't show it, they can get sued for being a Weather Channel and not showing these things.
Right. Like there are legit,
they have to.
There are legit weather people who actually care about what's going on.
Right.
Not everybody is in the conspiracy to tell you that the earth is flat and the hurricanes are coming.
So all you flat earthers are conspiracy theorists.
Man, I wrapped them into this. Yeah, I'm hitting everybody today. It's a 1-2.
Yeah, he's not discriminating right now, and all you people are racist.
Now, yes, racist against the white people. Finally, I get mine.
He gets his thing. He got his.
You know, I am the most hated person on earth.
Because you're white.
I'm white. I'm male. I'm American. I'm heterosexual.
Married.
I'm Christian.
Almost 4 kids, and you own a house.
Yes.
You have somehow climbed the ladder of success by stepping on the heads of other races
to become the most hated person on earth. Yeah.
This Mexican loves him, but
in sympathy.
Yeah, this Mexican loves him.
He's taken me under his wing. I am the most hated minority, the most marginalized person on the face of the earth. So please send donations to Mike Sonneville. Anyways,
and then I'll pay him.
Well, you know what Mexicans do with money, don't?
Well, you do need a lowrider. That's kind of like the. Anyways, let's get back to this.
So, everybody's going rabbit trails.
Antarctic energy weapons. So again, we're covering a ton of stuff here, and we want you to do your own research. So please do that.
So if you've heard of the Sean Ryan podcast, I like Sean Ryan because he verifies who he's talking to, but he lets them talk. And it's kind of like Joe Rogan. He verifies who he's talking to, but that doesn't mean that that person is telling everything true. And they like to hear from the person,
Right.
hey, what are you saying? What's your account?
And Rogan seems to ask the right questions.
Yes, he does, and I love it.
You got to kind of get to the truth and figure out what you're saying. And do you really believe what you're saying? You know, that kind of thing.
So Sean Ryan had a guy named Eric Hecker, who was an Antarctica firefighter for Raytheon Technologies, which, if you don't know Raytheon, they're a military industrial complex company. They make billions of weapons, right? He claims he was at the South Pole and that the Neutrino Observatory, which is real, there is actually a neutrino observatory, is a kilometer cubed
Particle detector. It's like
particle detector. Yes, exactly. It what they say is it passively observes neutrinos coming in from the cosmos. These are cosmic rays, which have 1,000,000 times more energy than the particle accelerators that are sitting underneath Sweden that they're trying to open spiritual gateways to let through the demons. I can't help myself.
But it's listen, we're not saying it can't be used that way, but we're saying it's like these people aren't that
Careful,
smart,
guys.
but they're not that smart.
Right. We're just not that competent.
We're
Anyways,
not that good.
That's what I always fall back on is like, okay, I just don't think we're that competent.
I don't think so either, dude. Again, if you look at civilizations past, and this is not a tangent, this is not a rabbit trail. What haven't we learned that the more these nefarious thinkers and leaders come up against God, that they're not going to get dealt with? Every single stinking time someone comes against God, they get dealt with.
And
God does it.
scripturally, the
Scripturally.
Tower of Babel, what were they trying to do? Now, I don't think it was just vertical height. Let's see how tall we can make it. I do think they were trying to open spiritual ladder, a spiritual gateway, which the Old Testament talks about spiritual ladders, right? Ladders to the heavens. Jacob's ladder. I believe they were trying to create a spiritual ladder through these pyramid type systems, which you'll find all over the face of the earth. Which, if
Mesopotamia, you'll find them in Egypt, you'll find them in Mexico, you'll find them. It's crazy how.
Yeah, what are they called? Ziggurats or whatever?
Yeah.
And it's crazy how similar they all look. Well, think about the timeline. God spreads man all across the earth. Do you think men aren't going to try and do the same thing that they did before? So what God did, though, was before they did it, because God himself said if they get together, they can do anything, he split them up. So to Massey's point, God has a hand in his watching. Right?
He does. And I want to read some scripture to you to kind of give you some verification. If you guys read Isaiah chapter 10, Jeremiah 30, if you read Micah 2, and I'll read Micah 2 right now, and just a piece of it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, because just give you some hope. I want you to hear this with the eyes, or hear this with the ears of the Spirit, and see this with the eyes of the Lord, okay? There are people who are trying to come against God, and they can't do it, but I want you to see this. He says, woe to those, Micah chapter 2, woe unto those who scheme iniquity, who scheme it. That means they're thinking about it. They're premeditating this. They scheme iniquity. They scheme sinful ways, sinful situations, who work out evil on their beds. When morning comes, they do it, for it is in their power of their hands. In other words, because I have power, I'm going to do this. I have the authority to do this. He says they covet fields and seize them, and houses, they take them away. They rob a man and his house, and a man and his inheritance. Therefore, thus says the Lord. And I believe, again, if you know anything about the Bible, God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Watch this. He says, behold, I am planning against this family, a calamity from which you cannot remove your necks, and you will not walk haughtily, for it will be evil, and it will be an evil time for them. Verse 4, on that day they will take up against you a taunt and utter a bitter lamentation and say, we are completely destroyed. He exchanges the portion of my people, how he removes it from me. To the apostate, he apportions our fields. Verse 5, therefore you will have no one stretching a measure line for you by lot in the assembly of the Lord. In verse 6, he says, do not speak out. So they speak out. But if they do not speak out concerning these things, reproaches will not be turned back. And so, like, if you look at this, and then I want you to see this too in verse 7. It is being said, O house of Jacob, is the spirit of the Lord impatient? Are these his doings? And then he says, do not my words do good to those who walk uprightly? What he's saying there is, if you're walking uprightly before God and these judgments come, you should be happy that these happen. Because when judgment comes on a land, it cleans out the evil and upholds the good. So when God's judgment comes, when God's fierceness comes, it's not to the righteous, it's to the wicked and the evil. So when his judgment comes, we're all like, oh my gosh, here comes his judgment. I'm not afraid of that right now. When I read this, I'm like, oh, this makes more sense. He says, dude, my words will do you good if you're walking uprightly. He's cleaning out the evil. So rest assured that when you're praying against government and saying, Lord, expose the wickedness, you yourself should be saying, hey, Lord, get rid of my wickedness too. But when that happens, you should be excited for that. You should be excited and say, Lord, I'm with you in this.
And
You know
then,
what I mean?
and then don't be surprised when destruction starts happening and things start happening, because it's almost like, Lord, destroy the wicked, take down the wicked, and then things start happening. It's like, what's going on? I don't understand. And we're going to get back to that concept because, especially, Massey and I were talking, and he was sending me some cool scriptures of like, ooh, this all makes sense on this.
Yeah, Deuteronomy 26 or 28, Leviticus 26, and all this other stuff, man. It's crazy.
So back to Antarctica. This guy is saying, look, this neutrino observatory isn't just passive, it's useful as an energy weapon. And if you imagine, you could take the energy of 1,000,000 times more powerful than a particle accelerator and shoot it outwards towards something, you could do some real damage. His claim is the earthquakes in New Zealand were caused by this system. Now, I am not verifying what this guy says. I'm not discrediting what he says. You can decide for yourself. Now, here's the conspiracy theory. Golly, dude, I can't talk when I do these things. What we're about to say is all conjecture and science fiction thinking, okay? What if they used HAARP, or this dew system in Antarctica, to warm the air in the ocean to help fuel a hurricane system that's already happening? Then what if they use seeding to redirect the thing so that it would go 180 degrees difference to attack Florida?
Because there is a meme going around where planes were flying around, their whole plane went around the hurricane to kind of guide it towards.
Which cannot verify, but it's there.
Yeah,
right?
and there are many people, like you, some of you are questioning that the most conservative spots in Florida are the West Coast. It's the Tampa, the Naples, the kind of that area, right? And Miami is starting to flip, but really down over there is where the conservative areas are. Could this affect elections? You see South Carolina, North Carolina affected, Georgia, the northern parts of Georgia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Could those affect the elections and all that kind of stuff?
And we're going to talk physical, then we're going to do spiritual for like 2 minutes because we got to get going. If it's a battleground state thing that they're trying to attack the battleground states with weather manipulation, which let's all just let that hang for a second. It's kind of like, okay, that's kind of wild. If that's the case, what you're going to see in October is other battleground states having massive catastrophes happening leading up to the election.
Right. Why not Pennsylvania? Why not Michigan?
Exactly.
Why not Wisconsin?
Arizona. Like, and we're not telling all of you guys who are like, no, I know the government is doing it. We're not telling you you're wrong. We're just saying, look, before you post on Facebook, before you convince yourself upon convincing yourself, do some research of validity outside of so-and-so's friend's brother's former roommate told me some stuff. That's not good enough, because how many videos have we seen of train cars, of tanks rolling through, and somebody's like, see, FEMA's moving on us, when in actuality it's from like 10 years ago and they were moving some shipments that had just been constructed to a base, right? So be careful about what you're watching online. So we'll do the spiritual and we'll wrap this up. This is my thought on all of this. I do believe there is a spiritual influence on these events. I do believe what is going on, this is me, I'm not prophesying, I'm not saying God showed me, this is just what I feel in my heart, grain of salt, is that God is showing us just a sample of, look, you guys have spit in my face long enough. And we're getting down to the moments of, okay, I'm pulling my hands off and you guys can go ahead and reap what you've sown. I do believe the demonic, the darkness can influence weather patterns, natural events, all of that. And what I think is going on is this is spiritual. And we have testimonies of people flat out praying around their properties and watching tornadoes
Like hop over.
their property or go right along the boundary line to not affect their property. Now you may say, oh, that's randomized, that can't be proven. You're right, it can't be proven. But to me, there's something there of person praying and that tornado going, no, I'm not going to go that way. I believe in hedge of protection.
Right. I do believe too with Mike that a lot of this is spiritual in the sense that God has given us over. I think when a nation, not the nation itself, I believe the nation of Christians actually believe in God and want to do the right thing. Here, however, I'll say our leadership has gone the way of Balaam. If you look at the way of corruption, right? Our leadership has definitely gone in the way of Balaam. Now, I can't say that the leadership represents the majority of the American people. It represents some, but it doesn't represent the majority. But Romans 1 is very clear, when he says the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress truth and unrighteousness. So you see that too. They'd rather worship and serve the creature more than the creator. They know who God is. That's why they're working so hard to get rid of him. That's why they're working so hard to get him out of schools. That's why they're working so hard to get him out of colleges. That's why they're working so hard to get him out of churches.
Misinformation,
yes.
The whole misinformation movement.
Suppress the
Suppressing
truth in unrighteousness. They do it because of unrighteousness. They do it because of these things. Romans 1 is very clear. It's not even just about, a lot of people reference that scripture because of the homosexual thing. It's actually deeper. It's actually God giving people over to what their desires are. So when you're seeing a lot of what's happening in government, God's saying, okay, you want this government? Go for it. God, I believe, is on the side of the righteous. Because when you look at the 1700s, I'm actually writing a book right now. And if you have not pre-ordered it, pre-order it. It's on the website. Is it on the website? It's not on the website yet. What are we doing? So I'm actually writing a chapter right now on the pastors of the founding, the reverends of the founding. I went back to the 1600s into the 1700s. And a lot of these guys knew that righteousness is what exalted a nation. A lot of the people in America were still for England. They weren't exactly saying, yeah, let's go fight a war, right? Some of the pastors were saying, no, we can't go against government. You're challenging authority. That's Romans 13. A lot of the things that were happening then are happening now. The sins that Reverend Samuel Davies, I've actually talked about this, I think it was in 1755, preached on a lot of the sins that are happening today. So there's nothing new under the sun. But yet God somehow was on the side of the righteous. And he said, you know what, this is spiritual. And he moved on the behalf of a lot of the founders. And so what you're seeing now is the cries of the people, number one, in America, to expose this wickedness. I'm going to give you some hope now. This is spiritual. It's exposing the wickedness we've been praying about. So in other words, we see evil and say, oh my gosh, it's getting worse. That's actually always been there. God's just bringing it to the surface. But the second thing it shows us is what is our duty and that we need to occupy till he comes. So we have a duty before God to get involved. I actually wrote this at the beginning of the chapter. Once you see it, it'll be funny. But everybody loves Tim Tebow. I don't know a person in life, even atheists that hate Tim Tebow. They may make fun of him, but they don't hate him. You know what I mean? But nowhere in scripture does it say get involved in the sports because the sports glorify the Lord. You know what I mean? But yet chapter after chapter after chapter references government and how godly it should be and how kings have been destructive against God and his law. And you're seeing where the righteous or the prophets get involved to do these things like Paul and whatnot and all the Old Testament prophets. So we get involved in government because we want to see righteousness exalt a nation, right? That's Proverbs. So what we're seeing today is you're seeing God give them over. And if you read anything of Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28, I'm actually pulling it up now. I want you to see what he says in these chapters, because he says when your disobedience comes, he says, if you do not obey me, verse 14, Leviticus 26:14, he says, and you don't carry all these commandments, if instead you reject my statutes and your soul abhors my ordinances, so you don't carry all my commandments, he said, I in turn will do this to you. I will appoint over you sudden terror, consumption, and fever that will waste away in the eyes and cause the soul to pine away. And you will sow seed uselessly, for your enemies will eat it up. I will set my face against you so that you'll be struck down before your enemies, and those who hate you will rule over you. If you read Jeremiah 30, it's the same thing. He says toddlers will rule over you. Look at the last debates we had. These are just, except for the vice president ones, that was actually good.
And most of us admit, and it's showing through, right? The truth is showing through, and you're noticing their plans and their agendas are coming out more and more, right? and there's less of an obscurity of like, okay, this was a photo op just
Right.
to show me what you want me to believe. But you notice everybody was saying, especially during Helene, you hate us and are sending money to Lebanon. You hate us, but you're sending money to migrants. So more and more, you're recognizing that your
Yeah.
leaders, your rulers that are over you and oppressing you, they hate you. They
Truth.
don't like you. And I'm just take that for what
No,
it
no,
is and
dude,
plug that
say
in
it,
there,
say
you
it
know?
without any kind of reserve. It's the truth.
Right.
Government has never loved its people when it wants power.
Right.
It does whatever it can. It lies, manipulates, steals. This is actually a Muslim tactic. They need to lie to get their truth across, their own thing. This isn't anything new. So, and I'm talking about the true deep blue Muslims, and I don't know if there's any.
No, it is a true scriptural thing for
Yeah,
them.
dude, governments will do this. And so what we need you to do is pay attention to what you're sharing. Make sure you don't share every little thing that's being out there. Do your own homework and research. Again, we wait for days to do this stuff because we want to see what's coming out. When I started seeing patents, I, like all of you, go, whoa, there's patents? Oh my gosh. But then it's like, brain over here goes, no, dude, just because it's a patent does not mean it's actually worked. It's just an idea. So we have to be careful how we do these things. We have to be careful our emotions don't get in the way of the spirit. We may think it's a spirit and it's righteous anger, but it's our emotion. Be careful. Walk in the fruit of the spirit. Be patient with what you're sharing. Be patient with the people around you and share the gospel. The gospel really is what sets people free. This conspiracy stuff has been since the beginning of time, but it's the gospel that sets people free. It sets them free from the spirit of terror and fear. It's the gospel that sets them free from the spirit of lies and animosity and division and sets them on the course of righteousness.
Yeah. So, guys, basically our verdict is we don't know, neither do you.
Government
right?
sucks.
Government sucks. That's our verdict every single podcast we do, right? Don't trust the government, but be careful what you're sharing, validate the information you're getting, and
Bingo.
And I'll say this, be skeptical for both things, right? Because sometimes what you do is you get skeptical, but then you rule out everything because you say, I'm so skeptical. Don't rule out everything, hear the evidence, validate evidence, and then start to make decisions based on that. But at the end of the day, like Massey said, like, what can you do? Can you stop them from using the energy weapon in Antarctica to change hurricanes? No. But you can pray, you can seek the Lord, you can fast, you can prepare with your family, you can build community networks.
Truth.
You have so much you can do without worrying about the Illuminati and the deep state. Okay? So,
But we love you.
but we love you guys. Go to theselfevidenttruth.com, get yourself some merch. It'll okay,
Change
I'm
your
not going
life.
to say that because that could be legal. I was going to say my opinion is your t-shirt might help you in the next hurricane.
It'll change your life.
Yeah, it'll change your life. It's the best t-shirt ever. It's the best, it's the greatest. It'll keep you dry for at least 30